The chandelier in the grand ballroom sparkled like a constellation as Marcus Whitfield adjusted his cufflinks for the third time. Today, he was marrying Victoria Langston, a woman whose wealth and status could open doors to everything he had ever dreamed of. The guests murmured with excitement, unaware of the silent calculations running through Marcus's mind. Victoria entered, radiant in a cream-colored gown that seemed to glow under the warm lights. Her smile was graceful, her presence magnetic, but beneath the elegance was a subtle tension, a secret she carried, one that could upend the life Marcus was so meticulously planning to secure. Marcus smiled and took her hand, a perfectly rehearsed charm on his face. "You look stunning," he said, though the compliment lacked warmth. He was thinking of the fortune, the estates, the influence, never the woman herself. But Victoria's eyes held a glimmer, a quiet confidence that Marcus couldn't read. She had learned early in life that appearances could be deceiving, and today, the world would see the perfect match. What they didn't know was that she held a secret so shocking, so deeply buried, that it could change everything in an instant. As the ceremony began, the orchestra swelled, and vows were exchanged with poise and grace. Marcus's mind, however, wandered to the ledger of her inheritance, the properties and the accounts he would now have access to. A smile crossed his lips, concealed beneath the mask of devotion. Meanwhile, Victoria recited her vows with a calm but calculating composure. Every word carried meaning, not just for Marcus, but for the future she was quietly shaping. She knew the truth of what lay ahead, and she was ready. Then, just as the officiant asked Marcus to seal their vows with a kiss, Victoria's hand lingered on the edge of a hidden envelope tucked beneath her bouquet. Marcus didn't notice, but what he didn't see could destroy everything he thought he had won. And so, the wedding ended with applause and celebration, masking the silent storm of secrets that both bride and groom carried. One thought lingered in the shadows of the ballroom. Marcus thought he had everything, but Victoria's secret was about to rewrite the rules entirely. Little did Marcus know, the life he was chasing wasn't what it seemed, and the woman he married for money was far more formidable than he could ever imagine. The morning after the wedding, sunlight poured through the tall windows of the Whitfield estate, catching the glimmer of crystal chandeliers and reflecting off polished marble floors. Marcus sat at the breakfast table, meticulously scanning the newspaper, a glass of orange juice untouched beside him. His mind, however, was already running through his plans, board meetings, investments, and the future he assumed Victoria had now handed him on a silver platter. Victoria entered the room gracefully, the morning sunlight highlighting the soft waves of her hair and the understated elegance of her silk robe. She smiled warmly, but beneath that smile, a storm brewed. The envelope she had hidden beneath her bouquet last night rested quietly in the study, a silent witness to secrets that could unravel everything Marcus had schemed for. "Good morning," Marcus said, his voice casual but tinged with ambition. "Sleep well." "Very well, thank you," Victoria replied, her tone sweet but measured. She poured herself a cup of tea, letting the steam curl like smoke from a mystery no one could yet see. As they moved through the morning rituals, Marcus began noticing little things, subtle pauses in Victoria's conversation, the way her gaze sometimes lingered on the family portraits, as if reading messages hidden in the smiles of ancestors, or how her fingers brushed against the envelope in the study with the faintest hesitation. It was a subconscious dance of caution, one he didn't yet understand. The first hint of tension came during a walk in the estate gardens. Marcus, trying to charm her with talk of their new life, noticed Victoria's distant expression. "Is something wrong?" he asked, a trace of concern in his voice, though more curiosity than genuine care. Victoria smiled faintly, letting the sun illuminate her features. "Nothing is wrong. It's just, sometimes life's richest treasures are hidden behind shadows, and sometimes those shadows are meant to protect what's precious." Marcus frowned. The poetic response left him both intrigued and slightly uneasy. "Shadows, are you talking about your family or me?" Victoria's lips curved into a knowing smile. "Neither and both," she said softly, almost whispering to herself. "There are things about me, about my life before today, that even wealth can't explain, but one day you'll understand." Marcus, however, was too consumed with ambition to notice the gravity of her words. To him, every smile, every pause, every cryptic statement was a puzzle to conquer, a challenge to control, not a warning. That evening, as the estate's lights dimmed and servants cleared the day's remnants, Victoria finally acted. She slipped into the study and carefully retrieved the envelope. Inside was a stack of documents, photographs, and letters, evidence of a life Marcus had never imagined. It revealed connections, secrets, and decisions she had made to protect herself, and those she loved from the very kind of men who married for money. She paused, reading one letter aloud softly to herself. If he cannot see beyond the gold, he is not worthy. If he only seeks wealth, he will find only loss. Protect what is unseen. Her gaze hardened. Marcus might think he had married the perfect, naive heiress, but Victoria had already been navigating dangers far more treacherous than his ambitions. She was calculating, resilient, and not to be underestimated. Little did Marcus know, the veil of luxury he had married into was lined with traps he couldn't even imagine. And Victoria's secret, the truth behind the envelope, was only the beginning. Over the coming days, subtle tests, whispered threats, and carefully orchestrated choices would reveal who was truly in control. And as the first storm of mistrust and revelation began to gather, one truth became clear. Marcus had married for wealth, but Victoria had married for survival, and she was far from finished revealing her hand. The Whitfield estate glittered in the evening light, but inside, tension simmered beneath the surface. Marcus wandered through the grand hall, adjusting the cuff of his designer suit and rehearsing his thoughts. Everything had seemed perfect since the wedding: wealth, status, influence. But a subtle unease gnawed at him. Something about Victoria had shifted, though he couldn't yet pinpoint what. Victoria, meanwhile, moved with the quiet grace of someone who knew exactly what she was doing. In the solarium, she traced her fingers along the rim of a crystal vase, her mind working through contingencies. The envelope had revealed more than just family secrets. It had shown her the kind of man Marcus truly was, calculating, ambitious, and willing to manipulate anyone for gain. And she wasn't about to let him take what didn't belong to him. That evening, during a private dinner in the estate's ornate dining room, the tension became tangible. Marcus spoke of investments, charities, and business expansion, his tone slick, almost rehearsed. Victoria listened, smiling politely, but each word Marcus uttered seemed to bounce off an invisible barrier she had erected. Finally, Victoria leaned forward, her voice calm but carrying an unmistakable edge. "Marcus, I think it's wonderful that you're so focused on our future, but there are matters we need to address first, matters of trust and transparency. After all, marriage isn't just about fortune, it's about honesty." Marcus blinked, caught off guard. "Of course, Victoria, I'm always honest with you." Victoria's smile tightened. "Honest? Then you won't mind if I ask a few questions about your plans regarding my inheritance, the estates, and your intentions." The air thickened. Marcus shifted uncomfortably, realizing that Victoria was no longer the passive, naive heiress he had assumed she was. Every question she posed cut deeper than any legal contract. She had a precision in her tone, a calculated grace, that made him stumble mentally for the first time since their wedding. "Victoria, I meant only to secure our future together," he said, his confidence faltering. She placed her hand over his, not in tenderness but in quiet dominance. "Securing the future isn't the same as controlling it, Marcus, and controlling me is a mistake you cannot afford to make." Later that night, Victoria retreated to the study. The envelope lay open on the desk, its contents carefully examined once more. Photographs, letters, and legal documents, proof that she had prepared for every eventuality. She wasn't just protecting herself. She was building a strategy, one that would expose Marcus if he stepped out of line, but also test him in ways he would never anticipate. Meanwhile, Marcus, packing the grand hall, felt the first prickles of doubt. Victoria's composure, her silent defiance, and the mysterious aura around her movements were unsettling. The perfect plan he had so meticulously crafted, to marry into wealth and control it, was beginning to crack. And with each passing hour, he realized that the woman he had married was far more formidable than he had ever imagined. As the clock chimed midnight, both sat in their separate rooms, minds racing. Marcus, plotting his next move, unaware of Victoria's preparations. Victoria, already steps ahead, anticipating every possible betrayal, ready to turn the game in her favor. One thing was certain: the honeymoon of appearances was over. The real battle for trust, for power, for survival had only just begun. The morning light barely penetrated the heavy curtains of the Whitfield estate, casting the grand bedroom in a muted glow. Victoria sat at the vanity, meticulously arranging her hair, but her thoughts were elsewhere. The envelope from the study, still open on the desk, beckoned with secrets waiting to be used. Each photograph, letter, and document was a chess piece. Every detail a move in a game Marcus didn't yet realize he was playing. Marcus entered, carrying his phone and a tablet, his mind already preoccupied with appointments and future acquisitions. "Victoria, the board wants me to finalize the merger today," he said, leaning casually against the doorframe. "I assume you'll be joining me." Victoria smiled, serene, but her gaze was sharp. "I have other engagements, Marcus," she replied, her voice smooth yet commanding. "But I expect a full report when you return. After all, transparency is vital, don't you agree?" He hesitated, sensing the subtle shift in her tone. "Of course," he said, masking his unease. Later, in the estate library, Victoria invited Marcus to sit with her. The fire crackled softly, throwing shadows across the mahogany walls. She laid out a series of letters, legal papers, and photographs across the table. "Marcus," she began, her eyes calm but penetrating, "there are aspects of my life you've yet to see. Things I've safeguarded not for wealth but for survival. I hope you understand that intentions matter more than appearances." Marcus picked up a photograph, squinting at it. It showed Victoria meeting with a group of influential people: politicians, business moguls, even private security operatives. These are just your connections, right?" he asked, attempting casualness, but his voice betrayed a hint of suspicion. Victoria's lips curved in a subtle smile. "Connections can be protective. They can also be instructive. Everything I do, Marcus, is calculated, not for show, but to ensure that people like you cannot manipulate my life for gain." Marcus felt a chill. For the first time, he realized that the woman he had married for her fortune wasn't just intelligent. She was prepared, calculating, and far more aware of his motives than he had ever considered. "Victoria," he started, voice faltering slightly, I thought I understood you. You understood a version of me that I allowed you to see," Victoria replied softly, her gaze unwavering. "But the truth is more complex, and complexity doesn't bend to greed or ambition alone." As days passed, subtle tests began. Victoria would casually mention hidden clauses in contracts, unexpected changes in estate management, or discreetly question Marcus about his intentions in front of their close advisors. Each move was designed to gauge his character, reveal his priorities, and quietly warn him that she was not a woman to be controlled. One evening, as the storm raged outside, Victoria confronted Marcus directly. "Do you realize," she said, her tone measured but icy, "that marrying someone for money is a dangerous gamble, one that often ends badly for those who underestimate the other party?" Marcus swallowed, aware now of the widening chasm between his expectations and reality. He had believed he could control wealth, status, even people, but Victoria had already rewritten the rules. Victoria leaned closer, her eyes glinting with quiet determination. "The fortune you sought is not a reward, it's a responsibility, and responsibility requires respect, integrity, and caution. Qualities I hope you are ready to show." That night Marcus lay awake, haunted by the subtle power Victoria now wielded over him. The envelope, the documents, the calculated demeanor, all of it painted a portrait of a woman far stronger than he had ever anticipated. For the first time, he wondered if his ambitions had blinded him to the truth. He had married for money, but she had married for survival, and survival meant never underestimating her. And as the storm outside battered the estate, both knew that the game had only just begun. Every conversation, every decision, every move Marcus made would now be under scrutiny. Victoria's secret was no longer hidden. It was a force, quietly unraveling the man who had thought he had everything. The Whitfield estate was quiet in the early morning, but inside, an invisible battle simmered. Marcus, still reeling from Victoria's veiled warnings, paced his private study. He had always thought control came with wealth, status, and charm, but Victoria was proving him wrong. Every word she had spoken, every glance she had given, was a carefully placed move in a game he had barely recognized. Meanwhile, Victoria moved through the estate like a shadow of elegance and calculation. She greeted the staff warmly, yet her eyes flicked to security monitors, the family ledger, and subtle messages left in correspondence, small signals that could reveal motives and character. Every encounter, every casual comment was a test, designed to measure Marcus's intentions without him realizing it. Later that afternoon, the first tangible consequence of her subtle game appeared. Marcus had called a meeting with estate managers, confident he could assert his control over her assets and influence the family operations. Victoria joined the meeting with serene composure, but her presence alone was enough to unsettle him. "Marcus, before we proceed," Victoria began, her voice calm yet commanding, "I think it's essential we review all operational decisions together. Transparency isn't just polite, it's necessary." He forced a smile. "Of course, Victoria, I'd never bypass your insight." But as the meeting progressed, it became clear that Victoria had anticipated every move. Contracts Marcus had assumed were his to manipulate were annotated with clauses he hadn't noticed. The advisors, subtly aligned with her guidance, questioned his suggestions in ways that revealed gaps in his knowledge and strategy. Every time Marcus tried to steer the discussion, Victoria's calm interjections exposed flaws he hadn't accounted for. By the time the meeting ended, Marcus felt a growing unease. He had married for fortune, but fortune, he realized, came with intelligence and cunning he hadn't fully respected. Victoria's subtle tests weren't just checks, they were lessons, revealing that ambition without understanding could be dangerous. That evening, a private dinner in the grand dining hall brought the tension to another level. Marcus attempted to regain his confidence with charm, speaking of investments, connections, and plans. Victoria listened patiently, but each word he uttered was met with quiet, precise observation. Finally, she set down her glass, her gaze locking on his. "Marcus," she said, soft but unyielding, "I need to know that you understand something fundamental. Marrying for money is one thing. Marrying someone with a past, with strategy, and with the ability to protect what matters, that requires more than charm and ambition. It requires respect." Marcus blinked, caught off guard. He had assumed he controlled the narrative, but the narrative was shifting under Victoria's hands. "Victoria, I didn't realize," he began, but she cut him off with a measured smile. "Realization isn't enough," she said. "Actions, choices, and integrity, those are what matter. The fortune you sought is conditional. It is not simply given, it is earned every day with honesty and foresight." As the storm outside rattled the windows, Marcus sat in silence, the first true cracks appearing in his self-assured facade. The woman he had married for wealth had already claimed the power, subtly but undeniably. Victoria retired later to the study, revisiting the envelope and her collection of documents. Each item was more than a secret, it was a weapon and a shield. She wasn't merely defending herself. She was establishing the rules of engagement, a quiet warning to Marcus that her world was not one to manipulate. Marcus, lying awake in the master bedroom, stared at the ceiling, haunted by the realization that the life he had envisioned, luxury, control, influence, was not what he had bargained for. Victoria's subtle tests were a mirror, reflecting his ambition, his flaws, and the dangerous underestimation he had carried into marriage. And as lightning flashed across the estate, illuminating the mansion in brief, startling bursts, one thought crystallized in Marcus's mind. He had married for wealth, but she had married for survival and dominance, and she would never allow him to forget it. The game had shifted. The stakes were higher than he could imagine, and in the quiet shadows of the Whitfield estate, Victoria prepared the next move, one that would challenge Marcus, test his true intentions, and force him to face the reality of the woman he had married. The Whitfield estate seemed to hold its breath that morning. Marcus, restless and frustrated, walked the grand corridors, the polished floors echoing each step like a drumbeat of impending confrontation. The earlier subtle games Victoria had played now felt more like traps. He had begun to realize that wealth alone could not secure dominance in a household ruled by intelligence and foresight. Victoria, meanwhile, moved with deliberate calm. She had arranged a series of coincidental discoveries for Marcus, letters of her past negotiations, photographs hinting at connections he hadn't considered, and even financial statements showing how easily she could uncover and counteract any missteps. It was a silent chess match, each move revealing the depth of her preparation. That afternoon, Marcus attempted to assert authority during a staff briefing. He proposed reallocating certain estate funds to an investment he had researched, thinking he could impress Victoria with decisive action. Victoria, seated gracefully at the head of the table, listened silently. Then, with a subtle tilt of her head and a soft, measured voice, she asked, "Marcus, have you considered the long-term implications on the estate's charitable commitments? Some actions, though lucrative, can have consequences unseen at first glance." The advisors exchanged glances, and Marcus felt the first real sting of embarrassment. Every move he thought clever was anticipated and quietly undermined. His frustration grew, but Victoria's serene expression offered no satisfaction, only a silent reminder that she controlled the pace and the perception. Later, Marcus confronted her privately in the study. "Victoria, this is more than subtle warnings now. You're undermining me in front of everyone." Victoria closed the envelope she had been reviewing, her gaze calm but sharp. "I'm not undermining you, Marcus. I'm ensuring that you understand the responsibilities of the life you've chosen. This isn't about control, it's about respect, foresight, and survival." Marcus's voice rose slightly, frustration and pride clashing. "I married you. Wealth, status, influence, it's mine now. Why play these games instead of being honest?" Victoria stepped closer, her eyes unwavering. "Because honesty without wisdom can be dangerous. And Marcus, you are learning that survival in this world is far more complex than ambition alone." That evening, as rain poured against the expansive windows, Victoria revealed another layer of her secret. She had invited an old mentor, a respected financial and legal strategist, to review the estate's operations with them. Marcus had assumed the review would be routine, a formal gesture to impress him. Instead, the mentor subtly highlighted areas where Marcus's plans were flawed or naive, all under Victoria's careful orchestration. Marcus, for the first time, felt cornered, not by law or finance, but by Victoria's quiet intelligence and careful manipulation. Each revelation chipped away at his arrogance, leaving him exposed to the realization that his assumptions had blinded him. That night, Marcus sat in his study, staring at the rain-smeared windows. His vision of power and wealth felt hollow. Victoria, in her bedroom, reviewed her notes and documents, each one a calculated reinforcement of her position. The envelope, now more than just a secret, had become a blueprint, one that ensured she remained untouchable while subtly guiding Marcus to either change or falter. And as lightning illuminated the estate in sharp, fleeting bursts, Marcus understood something fundamental. He had married for wealth, but Victoria's strategy, intellect, and resilience meant that the game was no longer his to control. The tides had turned. Victoria's hand was no longer hidden, and Marcus, ambitious and proud, now faced a stark choice: adapt to her world or risk losing everything he thought he had won. The storm outside mirrored the turmoil within the Whitfield estate. Thunder rumbled over the grand halls as Marcus paced his private office, tension coiling around him like a tightening spring. Each day with Victoria now felt like navigating a labyrinth he hadn't prepared for. Every word she spoke, every subtle glance, was a calculated move designed to test him. Victoria, poised and composed as ever, orchestrated the next phase of her strategy. She arranged private meetings with key advisors, ensuring they understood her priorities and subtly questioning Marcus's decisions in ways that forced him to justify each move. It wasn't public humiliation, it was a chess match, revealing character and intent with precision. That evening, during an intimate dinner in the candle-lit dining hall, Victoria began to push further. "Marcus," she said softly, yet with undeniable authority, "I noticed some discrepancies in your recent investment proposals. I'd like to review them together." Marcus, defensive yet intrigued, followed her to the study. Victoria laid out a series of documents, financial projections, charitable obligations, and investment risks. Each one highlighted errors or oversights Marcus hadn't anticipated. "Look here," Victoria said, tapping a particular clause. "You overlooked the fine print. A seemingly small decision could have major repercussions for the estate and the people dependent on it." Marcus felt a pang of frustration mixed with awe. For the first time, he realized that Victoria wasn't just protecting wealth. She was safeguarding values, legacies, and the people behind the numbers. As the night deepened, Victoria leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "You see, Marcus, marrying for fortune may seem simple, but surviving it requires intelligence, integrity, and foresight. I need to know that you're capable of more than ambition." Marcus, heart pounding, felt a shift within himself. His illusions of control were cracking. He was learning that the game wasn't about possession. It was about partnership, trust, and respect. And Victoria held the map. Later, as he retired to his room, Marcus reflected on the storm raging outside, both literal and metaphorical. Lightning illuminated the estate in jagged flashes, revealing shadows and corners he had never noticed, just as Victoria had revealed the unseen layers of life, strategy, and consequence. Meanwhile, Victoria revisited the envelope and her notes. Each secret, each revelation was another step in guiding Marcus, not with force but with precision. She was teaching, testing, and revealing the true depth of her world. Her secret wasn't just a defense, it was the foundation of power, patience, and resilience. By midnight, Marcus understood something fundamental. He had married for money, but Victoria had married for survival and mastery. And mastery, as he now realized, was far more formidable than mere wealth. The illusion of control had shattered. The true test of ambition and integrity had begun. Marcus now stood at a crossroads: adapt, learn, and respect Victoria's world, or crumble under the weight of the woman he had underestimated. The Whitfield estate was cloaked in the quiet tension of an approaching storm. Marcus had spent the day reviewing his investments and strategies, only to find that every step he took seemed anticipated, subtly countered, or questioned. The earlier games Victoria had played were now a pattern, an intricate web of guidance and tests he could no longer ignore. Victoria, poised and unyielding, had escalated her strategy. She organized a private gathering of advisors, legal experts, and estate managers, insisting on a comprehensive review of all operations. Marcus assumed this was routine, a formality to appease Victoria, but as the meeting progressed, it became clear that Victoria's preparation was far deeper than he had imagined. Documents he had considered secure were flagged with potential risks, gaps, or consequences he had overlooked. Every suggestion he made was met with calm scrutiny, forcing him to justify, rethink, and sometimes withdraw his plans. It was a revelation that shook him, not financially, but personally. Victoria observed him with the serene intensity of someone who understood every nuance of human ambition. She wasn't criticizing, she was revealing his flaws, his pride, and the limits of his understanding. "Marcus," she said softly, her voice slicing through the tension, "power and fortune are not merely held, they are managed with foresight and integrity. Those who underestimate what lies beneath often face ruin." Marcus swallowed hard. For the first time, he felt exposed, not to the law, contracts, or advisors, but to Victoria herself. Her presence was a mirror, reflecting everything he had taken for granted. Charm, ambition, and wealth were not enough. That night, in the quiet of their suite, Victoria approached Marcus with a new intensity. She pulled from her collection a folder marked with a personal seal. Inside were documents revealing aspects of her past Marcus had never seen, decisions she had made, alliances she had formed, and sacrifices undertaken to protect her family and legacy. "Do you see now, Marcus?" she asked gently, yet firmly. "I haven't hidden anything to deceive. I have hidden to protect. And now you must understand that survival and legacy require far more than ambition or desire. They require wisdom, respect, and foresight." Marcus felt the weight of the words settle like stones in his chest. Every instinct he had relied on, the certainty that wealth equaled control, was crumbling. The woman he had married for money was not only equal to him but steps ahead, orchestrating outcomes he couldn't anticipate. Tears, frustration, and awe mingled in his mind. For the first time, Marcus questioned himself. Could he rise to the challenge? Could he prove that he was worthy not just of the fortune, but of the trust and respect Victoria demanded? Victoria placed a hand gently on his arm. I married you knowing that you would be tested not for wealth but for character. And Marcus, you are being tested. Every choice you make, every action you take now will define the life we build together or destroy it entirely. The storm outside intensified, rain lashing against the windows, wind rattling the estate like the drumbeats of fate. Marcus, staring into the flickering candlelight, realized that the true wealth he had sought, control, legacy, and status, was no longer just a matter of ambition. It was now a matter of respect, partnership, and insight into the woman beside him. Victoria returned to her study, the envelope safely tucked away, her mind calculating the next moves, ready for the challenges Marcus would face. Marcus remained in the grand suite, sleepless, haunted by the realization that he had underestimated a force far greater than money, the intelligence, foresight, and resilience of the woman he had married. By dawn, one truth crystallized in his mind. The game had changed. Victoria was no longer merely a bride. She was a strategist, a protector, and a force he would need to understand or lose everything he thought he had gained. The Whitfield estate was silent in the pre-dawn hours, the calm before a storm that mirrored the turmoil inside Marcus. Sleep had eluded him for nights, and the weight of realization pressed down like the heavy drapes over the windows. The woman he had married for wealth, the heiress he assumed he could control, was now the architect of his unease. Every step he had taken, every plan he had devised, had been quietly observed, anticipated, and countered. Victoria moved with her usual serene authority, though today her actions carried an unmistakable intensity. She had orchestrated an unexpected confrontation, a formal review of Marcus's recent decisions and public statements, attended by family advisors, legal consultants, and estate managers. Marcus had thought he could handle it, but Victoria had already prepared the narrative and evidence to reveal gaps he couldn't defend. As the meeting began, Marcus felt the subtle shift immediately. Documents detailing investments, contracts, and correspondence were placed before him, not by Victoria's hand alone, but curated to highlight the consequences of haste, greed, and overconfidence. Marcus, Victoria said, her voice calm yet unyielding, these decisions, though well-intentioned, carry consequences that affect more than wealth. They affect lives, legacies, and the trust placed in us. I trust you understand that oversight is no longer acceptable. Every advisor's glance was pointed, every nod weighted with subtle agreement. Marcus's confidence faltered for the first time in weeks. He realized with a pang of fear that Victoria's strategy was not just defensive, it was a reckoning. Later in the quiet of the Grand Library, Victoria confronted him privately. "Do you see now, Marcus?" she asked softly, yet her gaze was piercing. "I have given you opportunity, guidance, and time, yet your actions show the same impatience, the same arrogance, the same desire to control without understanding. Wealth does not grant mastery over life, love, or legacy." Marcus's pride flared, but beneath it was a dawning awareness of his vulnerability. I thought I understood. I thought I could manage," he stammered. Victoria stepped closer, her hand brushing his arm, not in affection but as a signal of dominance. "You thought you could manage me, the estate, and your future with wealth alone. But character, Marcus, is revealed under pressure, and under pressure you are faltering." The envelope, the repository of her secrets, lay on the desk behind her. It was no longer just a document. It was a testament to her foresight, her resilience, and the invisible power she wielded. She didn't just hold wealth. She held knowledge, strategy, and the truth of her world. Marcus sank into a chair, the weight of his arrogance pressing down. He realized the illusion he had relied upon for years. Wealth as a shield, charm as a sword, was crumbling. The true game was not about money. It was about insight, integrity, and respect for the intelligence and strength of the woman beside him. Victoria's voice softened, yet carried the finality of a verdict. "Marcus, you married for fortune. I married for survival, for protection, and for integrity. If you cannot rise to meet the values I uphold, then every luxury, every asset, and every advantage you believed you gained will mean nothing." This is your reckoning." Outside, the storm broke in full fury, lightning streaking across the sky, wind rattling the estate, and rain hammering the grounds. Inside, Marcus understood that the storm he faced was not weather, but consequence. Every misstep, every attempt to dominate had been observed, calculated, and now confronted. By midnight, one immutable truth settled over him like a shadow. He had married for money, but Victoria's foresight, strategy, and unyielding will meant that control was never his. To survive this marriage, and himself, he would need to change, learn, and respect the woman he had underestimated. The stage was set for the final act, the ultimate confrontation where secrets, strategy, and ambition would collide, and the true resolution of their power struggle would emerge. The Whitfield estate was eerily quiet, the storm having passed but leaving a tension in the air that felt heavier than any thunder. Marcus sat in the grand hall, the fire casting flickering shadows across his face. He had been tested, cornered, and revealed. Every assumption he had carried, the belief that wealth equaled control, charm equaled power, had crumbled under Victoria's relentless strategy. Victoria entered, her steps soft yet purposeful. She carried the envelope and a folder of documents, the culmination of her plan, the truths Marcus had avoided, the secrets he had underestimated, and the consequences he had ignored. "Marcus," she began, her voice calm but carrying the weight of inevitability, "everything you thought you knew about control, wealth, and influence was incomplete. I married not for luxury, but to protect what matters, and to ensure that those who enter my world understand it fully." Marcus swallowed hard. He had been humbled, forced to face the limits of his ambition. "Victoria, I understand now," he said, voice tight, laden with both fear and awe. "I misjudged you. I misjudged this life. I don't want to fail you or myself." Victoria's eyes softened, though her intensity remained. "Understanding is only the first step. Actions matter more. Respect, integrity, foresight, these are your real tests, and I will be watching every move." She laid the envelope and folder before him. Inside were the full extent of her past alliances, strategies, and preparations, the blueprint of survival, power, and wisdom. Marcus felt the gravity of the situation, finally realizing the stark truth. He had married for wealth, but she had married for survival and mastery of her world. For the first time, Marcus bowed, not in submission, but in recognition of her unmatched intelligence and foresight. "Then teach me," he said. "Show me how to stand beside you, not above you." Victoria smiled, a rare, genuine smile that carried both triumph and hope. "Then we begin anew, Marcus, together, as equals. But remember this, nothing is granted freely. Every step you take from this moment must reflect the lessons you've learned." Outside, the morning sun broke through the clouds, illuminating the Whitfield estate in golden light. The storm had passed, but its lessons remained. A reminder of ambition, humility, and the power of foresight. As Victoria left Marcus to contemplate the path ahead, the camera of your story lingers on the envelope and the quiet strength it symbolizes. Secrets revealed, lessons learned, and a new balance of power established. And to all of you watching, remember, in life, true strength lies not in wealth or power, but in wisdom, foresight, and respect for the forces around you. If you enjoyed this dramatic conclusion, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story that dives deep into secrets, ambition, and the battles of the mind.